All right, guys, as you may know, there is a big election happening in Taiwan tomorrow on the 13th of Jan. This election is super important. As you may or may not know, China believes that Taiwan is an integral part of its territory. The Taiwanese people, on the other hand, believe that they are an independent nation and they want to forge their own identity. In this backdrop, we have upcoming elections, and the elections represent a very seminal point because there are two opposing parties. Both have a different view of the future of Taiwan and its relationship with China. And in this video, we're going to cover who the key parties are, what their beliefs are, what are the key issues on the ballot, other instances of election interference, and more. So welcome to the video. First off, let's break down the political landscape. Let's talk about the key parties that are involved in the election. Have a look. There's the Democratic Progressive Party. It's the ruling party which is led by Lai Ching-te, which advocates for Taiwan's separate identity from China and rejects the sovereignty of Beijing. They lean towards formal independence. Then, on the other hand, we have the KMT, which is the main opposition party represented by Hu Yi-a, which favors close ties with China. Then there is a third independent party which has also risen, which is led by Ko Wen-ji, which seeks a middle path in the relationship between China and Taiwan. So as you can see, the three parties are divergent in terms of views. Now let's talk about the key issues that are on the ballot. Key issues are around cross-strait relationships with China. DPP's victory may lead to an increased tension with Beijing, while the KMT aims for a more conciliatory approach. Now, in terms of Taiwan's sovereignty and its identity, the DPP firmly supports Taiwan's separate identity, whereas the KMT's approach follows the 1992 consensus, which suggests a different interpretation of the One China. On another video, we're going to go into what this consensus is. But effectively, what it boils down to is that both parties have a different interpretation of the consensus. The US is also involved here. The KMT says that Taiwan should not depend on the US when it comes to defense matters, while the DPP tends to line more closely with the US. And as you know, the US is heavily dependent on China when it comes to industries such as semiconductors, and there's a huge amount of world trade that goes through that strait. So, really, the US is very heavily involved in supporting Taiwan, and they wish to ensure the sovereignty and independence of Taiwan while it still has its interest in the region. Now, let's talk about election interference, which is another big issue. There are firm instances of how this is happening. Firstly, there are disinformation campaigns. There is allegations that Beijing is spreading fake news and using other means to influence the election. There's psychological warfare. There have been many instances and many months of frequent military exercises near Taiwan, and Chinese aircrafts are flying quite close to the Taiwanese airspace, and they're attempting to intimidate and create a sense of insecurity among the Taiwanese populace. As you know, President Xi, in his recent speech, made the claim again that Taiwan is a fundamental part of China and that the CPP wishes to have a one China over the next few years. There's also instances of cyber activities. There's increased cyber attacks on the Taiwanese government and infrastructure. Let's talk about what the Taiwanese people want. What the Taiwanese people want is status quo. They want to avoid escalations with China while preserving Taiwan's democratic and autonomous functioning. Now, let's talk about why this election is important. It is important because it effectively dictates the future of what will happen in the relationships between China and Taiwan. If the opposition party comes to power, then it effectively means that there are going to be closer relationships with China, which effectively could mean an easier integration of Taiwan into China. On the other hand, as we know, the existing ruling party, the status quo party, the incumbent party, wishes to have Taiwan form its own independent identity. So the re-election of the incumbent party could clearly have ramifications for the region, which may lead to a further acceleration of the pressure that China is currently applying on Taiwan. and create further tension within the region, which may lead to further alliances being formed within the Asia Pacific and Southeast Asia region, which has important ramifications for global trade, for the semiconductor market and industry in Taiwan.